Thank you, Jenny, Lynn, and Jasmine. That was beautiful. Buenos días y bienvenidos. Good morning and welcome to online worship at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin. My pronouns are she, her, or ella if you're addressing me in Spanish. It is a joy to serve this congregation along with my colleagues, the Reverend Abi Janamanchi, the Reverend Archine Turner, and intern minister Dana Edwards. Please know that whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are joining us from, whatever your beliefs, gender identity and expression, immigration status, or life circumstance, we welcome you to worship. If you like this video and you enjoy visiting us for worship, I invite you to hit like on this YouTube video and all of the videos you watch. It helps us to share our message with a greater audience in the search engines. If you're joining us for the first time today, I hope you'll let us know in the live chat. If you're new or if you feel new, you're invited to complete a newcomer form that will be linked there. I also want to introduce to you all Nicole Kazi, who has officially started as our new coordinator for communications and membership. You can reach out to Nicole at nkazi@cedarlane.org. Nicole's a wonderful addition to the Cedar Lane community, and I hope you'll take the time to get to know her. Our pastoral visitors are an extension of the pastoral ministry team. Joanne Jersey is in the chat as today's pastoral visitor. Please know she's here to support you. I hope that you will join us all at virtual coffee hour following the service, and we'll have some more details on that before our service ends today. You're invited to join us for our annual Kiplinger Lecture with Dr. John King, the former Secretary of Education in the Obama administration. That's happening via Zoom on Wednesday, August 26th at 7. Check the live chat or our website, cedarlane.org, to find out how to register. And now it is a great honor and a joy to introduce an esteemed colleague and a longtime friend of Cedar Lane, the Reverend Richard Nugent. Together with his family, he's been a part of the Cedar Lane community for about 12 years. After 11 years as a congregational minister, Richard now directs the UUA Office of Church and Staff Finances, which manages the UUA Health and other insurance plans, the UU organization's retirement plan, the UUA Compensation Standards, and emergency aid funds. He lives in Washington, D.C., but grew up in Maryland. And now I invite you to please say hello to Richard and say hello to your neighbors in the chat.
We speak to the God, the Goddess, the Spirit of life, the Holy. We speak to the mysterious thread that connects us one to the other and to the universe. We speak to the deep wisdom at the center of our beings. We embody the yearning of all people to touch each other more deeply, to hear each other more keenly, to see each other's joys and sorrows as our own, and know that we are not alone unless we create solitude for ourselves. And even then, community awaits us. Out of our yearning, we have come to this religious community. May we help each other to proclaim the possibilities we see, to co-create the community we yearn for, to worship what is worthy in our lives, to teach the truth as we know it, and to serve with justice in all the ways that we can, to the end that our yearning is assuaged and our lives fulfilled in one another and in service of a life larger than our own. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Jared Wilson, today's worship associate. My pronouns are he, him. I'm lighting my chalice in Silver Spring, Maryland. As I read our chalice lighting words, I invite you to share in the chat where you are lighting your chalice from. Why a flaming chalice, the question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer. A cup of blessings overflowing. A cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst. A cup of wine for celebration and dedication. The flame of truth. The fire of purification. Oil for anointing, healing. Out of chaos, fear, and horror, thus was the symbol crafted a generation ago. So may it be for us in these days of uncertainty, sorrow, and rage, and a light to warm our souls and guide us home. The first time my family moved, I was very young enough to not really understand why all the upheaval was happening, but still old enough to very loudly express my dissatisfaction with the entire process. Everything was changing. All of the things I loved were inaccessible in boxes, and I couldn't imagine when the ordeal would end and how the world would look on the other side. My parents bought me a picture book to help me through the process, Moving Day. The child in that book felt just like I did, sad, scared, angry even. And as I read, that child coped with their feelings by hanging on to their favorite stuffed rabbit. But when the rabbit went missing, everything seemed lost. Not to worry, the rabbit turned up in the end, and the child used that familiar touchstone to adjust to a new place, new house. Lately, I've felt again like a child in the middle of moving house. It's like being adrift with no landmarks or stars to navigate by. So much of what makes up my life is boxed up, waiting for me on the other side of this pandemic. What will it be like there? When I think of moving day, I keep coming back to the rabbit. For me, that rabbit is the familiar, tradition, habit, ritual perhaps, that can bridge us from one place, one way of life, to the next. Small things that I can keep doing to feel like myself. And maybe another lesson comes from the book itself. Seeing that other child in difficulty helped take the edge from what I was feeling. To paraphrase one of my favorite films, share your pain and gain strength from the sharing. Thank you for helping me gain strength every week.
Let us center ourselves, inviting our mind, body, and spirit into this space made sacred by our presence and our choice to be in community this morning. In this sanctuary of caring that connects us across space and time, we hold in our hearts those for whom parenting is a primary spiritual practice, those who are mourning a loss, those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, those with mental illness or addictions, those who have suffered abuse or injustice, those who've experienced a job loss or financial insecurity. We hold you in our hearts. Within our Cedar Lane community, we also celebrate together, and we celebrate with Wangari Kamau, who is delighted that her daughter, Joki Kamau, got a job offer this week as a UI designer, a dream come true. And it's so grateful to see her hard work paying off. Congratulations, Joki. We send healing wishes to Glennis Belay's daughter, Leslie, who lives in Madison, Wisconsin, and is continuing to recover from COVID-19. Longtime member Mike Benefiel received news yesterday that his cousin and her family needed to evacuate their home in the Santa Cruz Mountains on Thursday afternoon because their home is being threatened by 2 fires spreading in their area. We hold them in our heart. Our caring extends beyond the Cedar Lane community to others whose lives are lost and whose lives are impacted by violence and calamities and the COVID-19 pandemic in our nation and the world. We hold in our hearts those who are affected by the pandemics of racism and poverty. We hold all who are losing their homes and livelihoods to the fires in California, the flooding in the heartland, and those in fear as storms brew off the coast in the Gulf and the Atlantic. The reality of climate change is pressing in. We also hold in our hearts those who are still in recovery and are greatly displaced from the explosion in Beirut. Holding them, holding all the joys and sorrows we bring to this space and are present in this space because we are all a part of an inextricable existence, a web that unites us to each heart, each mind, each blade of grass, and so much more. Let us join our hearts in prayer or reflection. Spirit of life and love, holy energy of community that moves us and connects us across space and time with all living creatures. Be with us in this moment. May the tendrils that hold us be capable of stretching and bending to hold us as the space between our hearts expands. And may we feel the loving embrace of this web of community in our hearts, supporting us as we move through these days. May it be so. Let us now connect to the quiet places in our hearts, in our souls, the places of pain and secret joy, as we hold some silence together. May prayers be answered. May hearts be restored. Amen, and blessed be. Each Sunday, we give and receive an offering to support the promise and the practice of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The offering is a visible symbol of our commitment and our covenant to our faith, to change, to our religious community, to each other and the world. Our offering reminds us that our congregation belongs to us, to each of us, individually as well as to the whole of us. It is a weekly embodiment of the idea that a group working together for justice and love is more exponentially powerful than any individual. We can do more together. Today's Give the Plate offering is slated to support the Unitarian Universalist Association Living Tradition Fund. This fund is there to support ministers in times of trouble and hardship. When the tree lands on the home, when someone in the immediate family, a spouse a child, or maybe the minister themselves is gravely ill and the medical bills pile up. Almost every minister I know has a personal story about how the Living Tradition Fund has helped them. And as a minister from a working class background, who, like many other Latinas, has a history of making far less than white women, this fund helps me every single year as I seek to pay back my seminary debt, not just my undergraduate debt, but my seminary debt totals, as of this morning, $126,000. Like a lot of ministers who come from working class backgrounds, my seminary debt is a mortgage payment every month, but every year since I've graduated seminary, I receive a grant from the Living Tradition Fund that helps me to pay down my seminary debt so my monthly payments can be more manageable and so that I can turn my heart, my spirit, and my mind to doing what I'm called to do, which is serve this congregation. So I ask you today to please give generously to support this fund so that our ministers can continue to support the many congregations across the globe. You can give by the electronic means available to us, text or online giving, PayPal, QR code, or mailing a check to the church. I invite you now to give generously, and I'm going to go ahead and give my donation right now too. Thank you. Today's offering will now be gratefully received.
Good morning. The reading I bring you this morning is from one of the Unitarian Universalist meditation manuals. This one, In the Simple Morning Light, was published in 1994. And the author was Barbara Rohde, who was a member of our congregation in Corvallis, Oregon. The words of Barbara Rohde. My husband and I had been at a small hotel in Bergen for 2 days before we discovered the stairway. We had known it was there, of course. We had seen the sign, if not the thing itself. But we used the elevator. Save time, we thought, and the energy we needed for exploring that charming Norwegian town on misty October days. After breakfast on the third day, when the elevator seemed slow in arriving, my husband decided to walk up. He was waiting at the elevator door when I and the elevator arrived on the fourth floor. "Let me show you something," he said, and led me back down the stairs he had just come up. I was dazzled. Instead of the sterile institutional look of most hotel stairways, this one had the warm beauty of an art lover's home. There were bright paintings on all the walls, and at each landing, a rug in jeweled tones, a table with fresh flowers, an exquisite chair or two. When we reached the first floor, we walked up again, filled with energy, drinking in the beauty. "We might have missed this," I said. "Have to be careful about saving time and losing life," he said. The words of Barbara Rhodey.
Sunshine goes everywhere. It's temple of space. It's right, the good heart. It's creed of truth. It's ritual, works of love. It's temple of space. It's shrine, the good heart. It's creed of truth. It's ritual, works of love. It's profession of faith, divine living. It's profession of faith, divine living. It's temple of space. It's shrine, the good heart. It's creed of truth. It's ritual, works of love. It's temple of space. It's shrine, the good heart. It's creed of truth. It's ritual, works of love. It's ritual, works of love. It's ritual, works of love.
My family and I have been part of the Cedar Lane community for more than a decade. We came to Cedar Lane because of your willingness to host our campfire scouting group. During the 11 years our group met here, many, many lasting memories were made. S'mores at the fire pit, camping trips, important life lessons learned, and lots of crafts, including our annual Valentine's for Veterans card making that so many of you helped out with during coffee hour. And we appreciated your support during our holiday poinsettia plant sale. My family and I have been enriched in countless ways through our involvement with Cedar Lane. Cedar Lane is so well served by your entire ministry team, including your ministries of music, religious education, social justice, administration, and the tech team. So naturally, I said yes when my colleagues, the Reverend Katie and Reverend Abby, offered this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you. I'm speaking from my home office. My family and I live in a condo just a few blocks south of the Politics and Prose bookstore on Connecticut Avenue. I've been a UU minister for 23 years, following more than 20 years working on and around Capitol Hill. I still am a policy wonk. Since ordination, I've served 7 of our congregations as an interim minister, including 5 in the greater Washington area. Now I'm in my 13th year on the staff of the UUA, and I remain a minister with policy wonk responsibilities. As Katie said, my staff manages the UUA Health and insurance plans, the retirement plan, our compensation program, and the Living Tradition Fund that provides financial assistance to religious professionals and other congregational staff. While I live in DC, my office and most of my staff team are at the UUA headquarters in Boston. Or at least they were before the pandemic closed our office building. I used to travel quite a bit, about 60, maybe 70 flights a year. Now I've been working at home since March the 12th, 164 days ago. But who's counting? Since I spend a lot of time in hotels, or at least I used to spend a lot of time in hotels, I fell in love with today's reading the very first time I read it. In the unexpected stairway, it invites each of us to slow down, consider taking an alternate path to our destination, while opening our eyes to what otherwise might be hidden in our hustle and bustle to get where we are going or to accomplish the next task of our lives. It reminds me to explore the beauty, the meaning, and the life that can be found in otherwise unexplored corners. What about you? Do you tend to be a straight line person, or do you meander from location to location or one task to another? I love this reading because it invites me to explore the world surrounding me. And I need to be reminded. Perhaps you do too. I spend most of my days sitting at this desk with a messy bookcase hidden behind my Burmese Zoom screen. From time to time, I take a break or head to our living room to make a phone call or read a document. Sitting on our couch this spring, I realized how special the view from our 6th floor home. It's a view down Connecticut Avenue, but it's so much more. It's an opening to the broader world, to the comings and goings along Connecticut Avenue, but also to the changing view of the seasons. Immediately outside our corner window is a southern magnolia tree. I watched it flowering this spring and continue to watch various birds finding respite in its shade. From my office window, my view is a line of ginkgo trees. As spring arrived, the trees leafed out, and I watched squirrels chase each other from branch to branch. I can't wait until the fall when the leaves turn a golden yellow. I share this with you because I'm not naturally inclined to pay too much attention to the daily ebbs and flow of nature. There's usually too much on my to-do list, including my travel to Boston and elsewhere. But in doing so, I know I miss a lot. During the pandemic shutdown, I've been giving a lot of thought to our futures. The future of my 20-year-old son, the future of our nation and the world. So much rests with the upcoming elections. Will America blindly return to normalcy, and is normalcy even possible? What is society going to look like in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years? Can we find a way back from the abyss? I've also been thinking a lot about Unitarian Universalism. How will the pandemic change our faith? How will a year of virtual worship, religious education, and other programming change our congregations, our members, and our staff? I've been worried for years about the economic sustainability of our ministries as the cost of graduate education rise exponentially, as Katie shared just a few moments ago. Congregation budgets flatten, and personnel costs consume an increasing percentage of budgets. In thinking about the future of our faith, I revisited our past and identified 4 core principles that will help guide us into the uncertain future. These 4 principles are: 1, an understanding that our theology regularly involves. 2, a willingness of our faith to both welcome change while simultaneously resisting it. 3, a commitment to work toward a more caring and just society. And 4, a desire to expand our own circle of inclusion. Now let's explore each of these 4 for a few moments. The first of these 4 principles is an understanding that our theology evolves over time. As people of faith, we prefer to skip the elevator to the divine, and instead we take the stairs where emerging beliefs can be explored on each jeweled landing. Or to state it differently, we question established doctrine while envisioning new interpretations. This certainly was the case with many of our earliest foreparents. In the 16th century, for instance, Michael Servetus in France, the Rakovian Brethren in Poland, and the Unitarians of Transylvania bravely asserted that Jesus was a moral teacher who sought to lead people by his example to a loving God, rather than part of a Trinitarian vengeful God. Even today, more than 100 congregations keep the flame of Unitarianism alive in Transylvania, including our partner church in Dietzow St. Martin. Or consider John Relly, an 18th century Welshman who argued that Jesus' death saved all humankind and that no one was condemned to eternal damnation. Relly influenced John Murray, who would bring his radical belief in universal salvation to the American colonies, establishing the first Universalist congregation in Gloucester, Massachusetts in 1774. A generation later, scholars at Harvard College would apply literary criticism to the Bible, challenging many of the widespread beliefs regarding its authorship. Harvard College embraced Unitarianism in the early 19th century, a move that influenced generations of American clergy and congregations. In the last half century, Unitarian Universalism continued to evolve. The rise and dominance of humanism, the fellowship movement, the consolidation of Universalism and Unitarianism, the emergence of women's spirituality, the language of reverence, eco-spirituality, and demands, increasing demands for worship that is more inclusive and representative of a growing diverse membership. The second core principle of our faith is our willingness to challenge the traditions of our past while envisioning our future. This has often led to tension between adherents of the old and the proponents of the new that only time resolves. Arguably, one of the most influential forebears of our faith was Ralph Waldo Emerson. If Harvard College was the room where liberal Christianity was happening in the 19th century, Emerson chose to leave it. After resigning his pulpit, Emerson embarked on a career as lecturer and essayist. With publication of his essay Nature, the Transcendentalist movement was launched. The Transcendentalists, most of whom were Unitarian, believed the soul's intuition, rather than reason or scripture, was the best possible source of any religious knowledge. They believed the individual could directly experience God without an intermediary, and God could best be observed in nature. Theodore Parker, another transcendentalist, preached that Christianity would exist as a philosophy even if Jesus never lived. The Transcendentalists were the forerunners of what would emerge in the 20th century as eco-spirituality, our understanding of the independent web of all existence, and our embrace of world religions. But at the time of their emergence, the Transcendentalists were not well received by the established leaders of Unitarianism. It took time to reconcile the new with the old. In the 20th century, Unitarianism balanced its tradition of liberal Christianity with the emerging philosophy of humanism. This turn was inevitable given our long-standing commitment to scientific rationalism. Humankind, through science, technology, and education, was making great advances. The traditional concept of God just didn't meet the needs of modernity. God, if there was one, was far too distant and far too unresponsive to the great moral challenges of the day. Rather than speculating on the existence of God or the nature of heaven, the humanist focused on making a better world today. In the years following the Second World War, humanism became our dominant theology. While humanism is still the dominant theology in Unitarian Universalism, there remains tension between those who embrace a humanism grounded in atheism and those whose humanism is comfortable with traditional religious language. One argues that language is literal and should not be misused, while the other argues it's metaphor. As the ancestors of our faith looked beyond their congregations to the wider world, as they looked outside their windows, they increasingly recognized the injustices of the world. Working to make the world a more just and caring society is yet another core principle of Unitarian Universalism. In the 19th century, our foreparents led the effort to establish various social service and social justice movements, including universal public education. Thomas Mann was the very first Secretary of Education in the United States. The social work movement, services for the mentally ill, the animal welfare movement, and education of the blind and other disabled individuals. Many Unitarian Universalists were leaders in the abolitionist movement. And of course, Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross. In 1917, the Universalist Church of America called for a program of national social insurance, a living wage, quality education, and adequate housing for all children. What a great platform for today. And this is over 100 years ago. And just this week, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the enactment of the 19th Amendment that guaranteed women, or at least some women, the right to vote. It's important to note that many of the leaders of the suffrage movement, including Susan B. Anthony, Mary Livermore, and Lucy Stone, were grounded in our faith tradition. Throughout the 20th century, Unitarian Universalists have held leadership roles in the American Civil Liberties Union, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the Americans for Democratic Action, the Urban League, Amnesty International, and so many others. And of course, in 1965, dozens of Unitarian Universalist clergy and lay people responded to Dr. King's plea for people of faith to join him in Selma. And 2 Unitarian Universalists gave their lives to that cause. During the past 50 years, Unitarian Universalists have marched, advocated, been arrested, were leaders in numerous justice movements, including unfortunately, the serious economic justice, Black Lives Matter, and many more. You know the list. Many Cedar Laners of the past and present were among their number. They are today. And today, many UU congregations are active in the UU The Vote initiative, environmental justice, and the sanctuary movement. Cedar Lane has provided a sanctuary and home to Rosa and her children. Yet so much more needs to be done, both in our society and our own faith tradition, to ensure equity and justice. The final principle that I wish to highlight is our desire to expand the circle of inclusion within our faith tradition, to expand those who are sitting at the table. We have had some notable successes which deserve celebration. Going back more than a century and a half, both the Universalists and Unitarians ordained women into the ministry. These early pioneers in the pulpit were a relatively small group, numbering less than 100 in 1892, but they planted seeds that blossomed in just the last few decades. During my second year as a parish minister in 1998, our denomination became the first religious movement in the United States to have women as a majority of their working clergy. We've also been trailblazers in the rights of LGBTQ individuals. In the early 1980s, openly gay and lesbian individuals began serving our congregations as ministers. Our clergy officiated at same-sex ceremonies for years, and Unitarian Universalists were in the forefront of the fight for same-gender marriages. Did you know that 7 of the 14 plaintiffs of the landmark court decision in Massachusetts were Unitarian Universalists, and that the first same-gender marriage in Massachusetts was officiated by the president of the UUA at the time with 2 UUs? But we still have much work to do. Transgendered and non-binary individuals still haven't found a secure place in our circle of faith, nor do people with disabilities. Far too many of our congregations are not fully accessible, nor accommodating of the specific needs of individuals. This is particularly true of our religious education programs, where children with special needs, particularly those who are neurodiverse, are not always adequately served. And our greatest challenge continues to be welcoming people of color into our faith. The Black Lives Matter movement has shined a spotlight on so many inequities in our society. Just as society is grappling with the effects of white supremacy, so is our association and our member congregations. The recently issued report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change provides a roadmap to help our faith take concrete steps to address the systemic cultural racism found in our faith community. The work will not be easy, but it must be undertaken to ensure our future. What makes our faith so difficult to grasp is that our focus is on how to live in relationship with others and with the environment without the overlay of a unique relationship with a supernatural being. We see the world as pluralistic. We understand that there are many paths to the sacred in life. We see truth as evolving and therefore not absolute, and certainly not sealed in one book or a collection of books written in the distant past. We believe the questions one asks are often more important than the answers one receives. Our theology focuses not on a creator, but the creation. Our comfort as individuals struggling to live our lives in a complex world lies not in the hope of a better life in the hereafter, but in our collective efforts to improve life in the here and now. Our hope as a people of faith lies not in the hands of a supernatural being, but in the sacredness of humanity itself. There is a power greater than one individual, and that power is love. Our responsibility as a community is to extend the healing power of love, compassion, and justice to everyone we encounter. This is the critical work at any time, but even more so during this time of pandemic and economic challenge. So may it be.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations of old, restoring ruins of generations nations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come build the land, my people we seek. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Before the Reverend Richard Nugent shares our closing words, I hope you'll post a thank you in the chat. And I'd also like to thank the teams who make our services happen possible. Thank you to the members of our AV and visual arts teams, Don Woodruff, Michael McCrickard, Todd Chernikoff, Michael Morse, Barbara Thompson, Sandy Dossie, Bruce Hebbard, Debbie Trent, and Rebecca Nachtrieb for making our services possible and creating the beautiful in-gathering slides. Thank you to the membership and pastoral volunteers and all of the staff who've been active in our live chat. We'd love for everyone gathered here to stay in touch and join us at virtual coffee hour. Once we're gathered together in the room, the host will assign individuals to random breakout groups so that we can have some small connections and get to know each other better. All of the details will be on the screen after the postlude. Thank you for choosing to be in community today.
Our closing words were written by Beryl Dunham, who was a distinguished professor of philosophy at Temple University in the years following World War II. His career was cut short when he was fired in 1953 for refusing to answer questions before the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Not only was he fired, but for 18 years he was blacklisted throughout academia. Given the serious threats to our civil liberties and democracy itself today, I find these words most pertinent. Now, therefore, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides and good does not yet prosper, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence and valor, that our small victories may end in triumph, and the world awaited be a world attained. So may it be. Be well, friends.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly, never turning
Gonna keep on loving boldly.
Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back.
Gonna keep on holding freedom.
Keep on holding freedom. Keep on holding freedom. Never turning back. Never turning back.
Gonna keep on moving forward.